out to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, catching up with our good buddy Brian Holland. Brian, let's start with baseball. The defending national champions, they're still in the top 25. However, one player in particular, Cade Arrambide, had himself a weekend, especially a Sunday, 4 home runs there. Let's just talk about that performance and what you made from the superstar there for the Tigers.
Yeah, school record, 4 home runs, 7 RBI. Oh, yeah, you got all the stats there on the screen. And still kind of a young guy in the program, but Jay Johnson came into the season just saying, like, look, I know he plays catcher, predominantly, but he can be the best baseball player in our program. We're talking about a program right now that has Derek Curiel, who is going to be, but from the people I've talked to, a top 10 pick. So that's showing you the ceiling on a guy like Cade Arrambide. Kind of has very toolsy back there. And then think about this. You're getting the high praise like that from, 2-time National Coach of the Year, Jay Johnson, a guy who's won 2 of the last 3 national championships. And he's been around Dylan Cruz and, Jacob Berry, Paul Skeens, all these major guys who are primetime players and have come through this program. And he's heaping all this praise on Arrambide. And Arrambide has actually kind of given up some of that catcher role to Omar Cerna Jr., another young pup in the program. So I can't really ever remember having 2 just all SEC caliber catchers. Usually if you have a solid catcher for the year, like, as they say in West Texas, you're living in high cotton. Like, you've got uptown problems past that because, having a catcher and having that backstop back there, it's just such a luxury. And LSU has 2 of them. And so they've had to put Arrambide into that designated hitter spot. And he keeps raking here in Baton Rouge. It's been really fun to see. It's a different kind of baseball, too, to have 2 catchers back there that you really rely upon. I've had some inconsistency there at first base, so it's going to be interesting to see, who catches fire. We're about to start heading down the stretch here in the regular season, now in the second half of that regular season technically. So, you come down the stretch here in the SEC, who catches fire and who maybe switches over to first base, or do you keep him at designated hitter, or certain pitchers like the way he catches, certain matchups there at the plate. Really gives Jay Johnson a lot of flexibility. And like I use the word luxury. I think that's probably the best word for it going into the home stretch and finding a backstop or 2 backstops back there and 2 that can hit. That's really rare.
Well, Brian, I know we just met today, but I'll let you know I went to the University of Tennessee, so I'm a pretty big ball fan. And then just looking at that last game, it started out I was feeling pretty good. It felt like Tennessee had it under the belt. Everything was going smoothly. Then it really wasn't looking good. And then we were going into extra innings, and then when that 12th inning came, it definitely was looking not good for the Vols. So I want to get your opinion. Do you feel like this is a game that will go down in history for LSU, especially with Arrambide scoring 4 home runs?
Yeah, so, obviously you got the school record. So, yeah, that's going to go down in the history books. They also set attendance records, building up that stadium. I think the Vols fans certainly deserve, some things showing up, especially in the Tony V era. And now you have the house that Tony built, I guess, out there. Still plays a little small there in the outfield, but I was talking to, my reporter, my weekend anchor, Chessa Boucher. She's been on this show plenty of times. She went up there for that final series of Pulmonary at LSU. That's been an interesting storyline this year, last year to follow as well. But, when they went up there, obviously for the Super Regional, and they had just come off a big upset of Oregon. They had traveled across country. This was going to be, something that they were going to try and send Pulmonary out on a good note. She told me about some of the facilities and some of the things there, and they couldn't really pack it in. They couldn't have the crowds that they wanted. It was really limited for the Vols fans. So good for, Tennessee fans. Now they've got a lot more seating, over 7,000. So that was pretty cool. So it's not just the performance on the field. I think it also says something about this Tennessee Volunteers baseball program as well.
Brian, I think we had talked to you earlier in the season after LSU dropped I think it was a couple games at home, and we were asking, is it time to hit the panic button just yet? And you had talked about how just, hold your horses, everyone, because LSU did the same thing last year, and they came back and won the national championship. And then, if I'm not mistaken, like a week or two after, they dropped that series to Sacramento State. And again, I was like, okay, Brian said, let's pump the brakes here a little bit. But seeing as what LSU has been able to do in the last few SEC series, would it be fair to say that LSU is now back on track, headed towards that same route that they were headed last year?
Yeah, it kind of almost feels like Groundhog's Day now that you pointed out, and we talked about some of the history. This is just what happens in college baseball. I mean, you guys know all about the midweek loss. The Tennessee Techs that come to town. Some of those. I mean, LSU lost to Southern, the HBCU across town here in Baton Rouge just last year. So, and that was at home. So, it can happen. Being in a certain market like Baton Rouge, this is why, I've had so many other opportunities, and it's so hard to even compare them to Baton Rouge. This place is just kind of built different, like Lane Kiffin keeps saying. I'm driving around town, I'm driving into work. They're talking college baseball for a half an hour.
Yeah.
And you don't get that a lot of places. And this is the place that I fell in love with college baseball, too. I've been to some other great markets, and they've got great college baseball, too. Some great fans, great people, great programs. But in the SEC, it's just a little bit different. In Baton Rouge, you guys know this. I mean, I grew up 4 hours down the road in Houston, and we would talk about the people of Louisiana. They're a little different. It's good and it's bad, right? It's really good. It's really good when they got it rolling here, and college baseball is a lot of fun. And even a town the size of Baton Rouge, you talk about the city limits, like 400-something thousand, but in our viewing area, it's more like 800,000 to 900,000. So when a place like that feels like it all converges, and it's a capital city that all converges on South Baton Rouge and Alec Box Stadium, trying to squeeze 13,000 people in there and more tailgaters outside. Yeah, man, it's different, and at the same time, to your point, it all kind of feels the same. Every team is looking for that third starter. Every team wants to know if they're in a jam, in a regional, who's going to be the guy and goes and eats up 6 innings and only gives up 1-2 earned runs in a game where your season could end. Everyone's kind of running into the same problems. You know what I mean? It's like we always come into these and we go, man, they pulled in a huge haul in the transfer portal, and they've got all these top recruits and all that. How are they going to fit all those pitchers into one staff? And then at the end, it's like, hey, man, like, who's going to step up? So it's really funny to hear it on sports radio here, but then see the message boards across the country. Everyone's kind of dealing with the same stuff.
No question.